Hi, I'm Vignesh. Today I'll be talking about India's trade challenges, the problems, solutions, and the roadblocks. India's trade plays a crucial role in the economy, contributing to growth, employment, and foreign exchange reserves. But despite being one of the fastest growing economies, India faces major trade challenges that impact its long term stability. If you have to look at the key trade problems, the first one would be trade deficit. India has consistently run a trade deficit, meaning imports exceed exports. In 2023, the deficit touched record highs mainly due to crude oil, gold, and electronic imports. Crude oil alone accounts for 25% of total imports, making India highly dependent on global price fluctuations. Gold, one of the largest imports, adds to the problem as it doesn't contribute to economic productivity. On the other hand, exports in sectors like textiles and manufacturing struggle to keep up with global competition. A high trade deficit, means it weakens the rupees, increases foreign debt, and makes India vulnerable to external economic shocks. The second factor would be, I think, weak manufacturing and over reliance on imports. Despite efforts like Make in India, manufacturing still lags behind countries like China and Vietnam. India imports about 60 to 70% of its electronics, including mobile phones, laptops, and semiconductors. Solar panels, medical devices, and heavy machinery are also imported in large quantities. The lack of efficient supply chains, skilled labor, and the research and development investments has slowed the growth of Indian manufacturing. Probably with with better infrastructure and policy support, India could reduce import dependence and strengthen local production. The third factor, I think, would be trade barriers and limited export growth. India's exports predominantly are driven by IT services, pharmaceuticals, and textiles, but high tariffs, complex regulations, and inadequate incentives make it difficult for businesses to expand globally. Uh, Countries like Vietnam and Bangladesh have overtaken India in textile exports, offering lowering costs and better trade agreements. The agricultural sector faces restrictions in global markets due to price fluctuation and subsidies in competing countries. Indian manufacturers struggle with logistical inefficiencies, high transportation costs, and port delays. It makes the exports less competitive. If you have to look at the measures and timelines for the short time, as in for the next 1 to 3 years, it would be strengthening existing industries, improve ease of doing business by simplifying export procedures and reducing bureaucratic delays, expand production linked incentive schemes to attract investments in key sectors like electronics, defense, and semiconductors, increase free trade agreements with major economies to boost exports and diversify markets. For the medium term, for the next 3 to 5 years, it will be enhancing domestic production, invest in infrastructure to for better ports, highways, and power supply will improve logistics and reduce exports cost. Uh, Encourage local manufacturing in strategic sectors like renewable energy, medical equipment, and automobile components. Skill development program to create a workforce ready for high tech industries. For the long term, it would be achieving self reliance in critical sectors. Develop a semiconductor industry to reduce its reliance on China and Taiwan. Reduce oil import dependence by expanding renewable energy and electric mobility. Strengthen global trade relations by negotiating favorable terms in international trade agreements. The barriers to implementation would be first and foremost, it would be the bureaucratic hurdles, policy delays, and regulatory challenges slow down industrial growth, infrastructure bottleneck, poor connectivity and logistics increase export costs. The global trade uncertainties, trade wars, economic slowdowns, and geopolitical issues impact India's exports. Cost competitiveness. Indian products need better pricing to compete with low cost manufacturers like China and Vietnam. If you have to look at historical references, in 1991, India faced a severe foreign exchange crisis, which forced economic liberalization, opening the country to global trade and investment. This led to the rapid growth in IT and services exports. During the 2008 global financial crisis, also Indian exports declined sharply, highlighting the need for a more diversified and resilient trade policies. India has always adapted to economic challenges with the right policies, trade reforms can drive long-term growth and stability. So, if you have to conclude on this, India's trade problems are not impossible to fix, but they require consistent efforts in manufacturing, infrastructure, and policy reforms. If implemented effectively, the next decade could see India emerge as a global trade leader, reducing dependence on imports and strengthening its exports capabilities. Thank you.